The moment Claire Bennett saw two pink lines appear on the test, she realized her life was about to collide with the most dangerous billionaire in Manhattan. Rain hammered against the hospital windows hard enough to sound like rocks thrown from the sky while Claire stood frozen inside the tiny restroom on the third floor of St. Vincent Medical Center. The fluorescent light above her buzzed softly, cold and pale against her tired face, and for a few terrifying seconds she forgot how to breathe. Her fingers trembled around the pregnancy test as if her body already knew what her mind refused to accept. Positive. Not faint. Not questionable. Positive. Claire slowly lowered herself onto the closed toilet seat because her knees no longer trusted the floor beneath her. At 27 years old, she had spent most of her life surviving disasters quietly. Medical debt from her mother's treatments. Double shifts playing violin at luxury hotels. Rent notices slipped under her apartment door. But this felt different. Bigger. Permanent. Her hand instinctively moved to her stomach even though there was nothing to feel yet. "Miss Bennett?" the nurse called gently from outside the door. "The doctor would like to speak with you." Claire swallowed hard and stepped into the hallway, the scent of antiseptic and burnt coffee filling the air around her. She followed the nurse into a small ultrasound room where Dr. Evelyn Harper sat waiting with a tablet in her hands. The older woman's expression softened the moment Claire entered. That terrified her more than anything. Doctors only looked at people like that when life was about to change forever. "Please sit down," Dr. Harper said quietly. Claire obeyed, gripping the edge of the chair so tightly her knuckles turned white. The monitor beside the bed flickered to life, casting soft blue light across the darkened room. Rainwater slid down the windows behind them in long silver streaks while thunder rolled somewhere above the city skyline. "Claire," the doctor began carefully, "you're approximately 10 weeks pregnant." The words hit her chest like a sudden drop in an elevator. Pregnant. The room blurred for half a second before her vision steadied again. She opened her mouth but no sound came out. Then Dr. Harper turned the monitor toward her. "And there's something else." Claire looked at the screen. 2 tiny shapes. 2 faint flickers. 2 heartbeats. Twins. The word barely left the doctor's lips before tears filled Claire's eyes. Twins. Her breathing became shallow and uneven as memories rushed back all at once. The charity gala 6 months earlier. Candlelight reflecting against crystal chandeliers. A citywide blackout trapping hundreds of guests inside the Blackwood Hotel. And Damian Blackwood standing beside her near the rain-covered windows, his expensive suit jacket draped over her shoulders while the rest of Manhattan disappeared into darkness below them. One night. One impossible night with the billionaire every magazine called emotionally untouchable. Claire had never expected to see him again after sunrise. She definitely never expected this. "Are you okay?" Dr. Harper asked gently. Claire nodded even though she wasn't. Because outside the hospital entrance below, black SUVs were suddenly pulling up one after another through the rain, and somewhere deep in her chest, a terrifying feeling whispered the same thing over and over. Damian Blackwood was about to find out. Claire pressed both hands against the edge of the examination table as thunder rattled the hospital windows again, louder this time, close enough to make the fluorescent lights flicker overhead. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. Twins. The word refused to settle into reality. Dr. Harper continued explaining prenatal vitamins, follow-up appointments, and high-risk precautions, but Claire barely heard any of it because her mind was trapped 6 months in the past. Back to the night Manhattan lost power. Back to the man whose name alone could silence an entire boardroom. Damian Blackwood. Even now the memory felt unreal, like something borrowed from another woman's life instead of her own. Claire remembered the exact sound the ballroom made when the lights died that night. Hundreds of conversations cut off at once. Crystal glasses clinking in confusion. A woman somewhere near the stage gasping loudly as darkness swallowed the charity gala inside the Blackwood Grand Hotel. Emergency lights eventually painted the room in dim gold shadows, but by then most guests had already turned anxious and irritated. Billionaires hated inconvenience. Claire had simply tightened her grip on her violin case and waited quietly near the rain-covered windows overlooking Fifth Avenue. She had been hired to perform music for the event. Nothing more. Invisible people like her were easy to ignore in rooms filled with money. But Damien noticed her. That was the dangerous part. "You kept playing after the blackout," he had said softly from beside the window. Claire still remembered turning toward him and nearly forgetting how to speak. Damien Blackwood did not look like the magazines. In person he seemed calmer. Colder too. Tall enough to make everyone around him appear smaller without trying. Dark tailored suit. Silver watch catching the candlelight. Eyes that looked permanently exhausted, as if sleep had become a stranger years ago. People looked nervous, Claire had answered carefully that night. Music helps. Damien studied her for several seconds before glancing toward the storm outside. Most people run toward attention when things fall apart, he said quietly. You disappeared into the background. Claire remembered laughing softly at that. That is usually where I belong. But Damien surprised her. No, he replied. I do not think it is. The memory tightened painfully around her chest now. Because after that conversation something strange happened between them. Not romance. Not fantasy. Just two lonely people trapped inside a dark hotel while rain flooded Manhattan streets below. They talked for hours beside the windows while guests complained around them. Claire told him about her mother's medical bills and how she played violin at luxury events to survive. Damien admitted he had not slept properly in nearly 10 years. Not since losing his younger twin brother in a car accident at 19. Everyone thinks money protects you from grief, he said that night, staring down at the city lights returning one building at a time. It does not. Claire never forgot the look in his eyes when he said it. Like a man standing alone in a house too large for one heartbeat. By midnight the storm had become violent enough that hotel management offered private suites for stranded guests. Claire had planned to leave anyway until Damien quietly stopped her near the elevator and handed her his jacket because her coat was soaked through from the rain earlier. Stay until morning, he told her. New York is dangerous tonight. And somehow she did. One impossible night that neither of them spoke about afterward. No promises. No dramatic goodbye. Just sunrise spilling through penthouse windows and Damien standing silently beside the coffee machine while Claire slipped away before the city fully woke up. She had convinced herself it was better that way. Men like Damien Blackwood belonged to another universe entirely. But now she was sitting inside a hospital room staring at two tiny heartbeats on a screen while black SUVs lined the curb downstairs. Miss Bennett? Dr. Harper asked gently, breaking through the storm of memories. Claire blinked hard and looked toward the window. Rain streaked across the glass while security guards in dark suits stepped out onto the sidewalk below. Her stomach twisted instantly. Because she recognized the lead vehicle. Manhattan newspapers called it the Ghost Convoy. Damien Blackwood's personal security team. And standing beside the longest black SUV in the pouring rain was Damien himself, staring directly toward the hospital entrance like a man who already knew his entire world had just changed. Claire Bennett learned something terrifying that afternoon inside St. Vincent Medical Center. Billionaires do not show up in the rain unless they are about to protect something that belongs to them. Her pulse hammered wildly as she stared through the third-floor window at the line of black SUVs below. Manhattan traffic crawled around them while rain poured over the city in silver sheets, but nobody dared honk at the convoy blocking half the street. People on the sidewalks slowed down instinctively. Some pulled out phones. Others simply stared. Damien Blackwood had that effect on New York. Power followed him the way storms followed thunder. Claire stepped back from the glass so quickly her shoulder bumped against the ultrasound machine. Miss Bennett? Dr. Harper asked carefully. Do you know that man? Claire opened her mouth but no answer came out. Because the truth sounded impossible even inside her own head. She barely knew Damien. One night. One conversation that somehow lasted until sunrise. That was all. Yet deep down, Something about the way he stood below the hospital entrance terrified her more than the pregnancy itself. He looked calm. Too calm. The kind of calm powerful men wear right before they change someone's future forever. A sharp knock suddenly echoed against the examination room door. Claire nearly jumped. The nurse stepped inside looking pale. "Dr. Harper," she said nervously. "There are security officers downstairs asking for Miss Bennet." Claire's stomach tightened instantly. "Tell them I already left," she blurted out before she could stop herself. The nurse hesitated. "They specifically requested privacy and said Mr. Blackwood is waiting personally." Silence swallowed the room. Even the rain outside suddenly seemed quieter. Claire looked down at the ultrasound photos still resting in her lap. 2 tiny heartbeats. 2 impossible lives connected forever to the most untouchable man in Manhattan. Panic crept slowly into her chest. She knew exactly what the media would do if this became public. Billionaire heir scandal. Hotel musician traps CEO. Pregnant with twins after secret affair. She could already hear the headlines forming. Women like Claire were always destroyed first in stories involving powerful men. Dr. Harper studied her expression carefully before speaking in a softer voice. "Claire, are you in danger?" "No," Claire answered immediately. Then she hesitated. "I do not think so." But uncertainty lingered behind the words. Because she honestly did not know. Damien had been kind to her that night. Gentle even. But kindness from powerful men often came with conditions ordinary people could not afford to misunderstand. Another knock interrupted the silence. Firmer this time. The nurse swallowed nervously before opening the door halfway. One of Damien's security men stood outside in a dark tailored coat, rainwater still dripping from his shoulders onto the polished hospital floor. "Miss Bennet," he said respectfully, "Mr. Blackwood would like 5 minutes of your time." Claire's breathing turned shallow. "How did he even know I was here?" The security man hesitated just slightly. "Mr. Blackwood has been looking for you for several months." Her heart stopped for one terrifying second. Looking for her. Claire stared at him in disbelief while Dr. Harper quietly excused herself from the room, sensing something deeply personal unfolding. The door clicked shut behind her, leaving Claire alone with the sound of rain and the pounding of her own heartbeat. Then footsteps approached slowly down the hallway outside. Calm. Measured. Familiar. Claire remembered those footsteps from 6 months ago crossing marble floors inside the Blackwood Grand Hotel, while candlelight flickered across dark windows. Her fingers tightened around the ultrasound photos instinctively. The door opened. Damien stepped inside without speaking. He looked exactly the same and completely different at once. Dark wool coat. Black tie loosened slightly from the rain. Silver drops still clinging to his hair. But the exhaustion in his eyes seemed deeper now, heavier somehow. Like the last 6 months had not been easy for him either. For several seconds neither of them moved. Neither breathed properly. Damien's gaze slowly dropped toward the ultrasound images trembling in Claire's hands. Then toward her stomach. Something unreadable flickered across his face. Shock. Fear. Hope. Claire could not tell. The billionaire who terrified boardrooms suddenly looked like a man trying very hard not to fall apart. "Twins?" he asked quietly. His voice almost broke on the word. Claire swallowed hard and nodded once. Damien closed his eyes briefly as thunder rolled above Manhattan again. When he looked back at her, his entire expression had changed. Not cold anymore. Not distant. Protective. Dangerous. Certain. "Claire," he said softly, taking one slow step closer, "you should know something before the rest of this city finds out." He paused just long enough for her pulse to spike again. "I never stopped looking for you after that night." Claire could not explain why Damien Blackwood's next words frightened her more than the pregnancy itself. "I searched every hotel payroll in Manhattan," he said quietly, rain tapping against the hospital windows behind him. "I asked charities for guest lists. I even had my security team review surveillance footage from that night." His voice remained calm, but exhaustion lived underneath every syllable. Then you disappeared. Claire stared at him in disbelief. Nobody had ever searched for her before. Not really. People forgot women like Claire Bennett all the time. Waitresses. Musicians. Daughters drowning in medical debt. New York swallowed invisible women every day without noticing. Yet somehow the most powerful billionaire in the city had spent 6 months trying to find her. Why? She whispered before she could stop herself. Damien looked at her for a long moment. The answer clearly mattered to him. Because that night was the first time in years I felt human again. Silence settled heavily between them. Claire's chest tightened unexpectedly. Outside the storm intensified, rain hammering against the glass while distant sirens echoed somewhere downtown. Damien slowly stepped closer to the ultrasound screen still glowing beside her chair. 2 tiny flickering heartbeats reflected faintly in his dark eyes. Claire noticed the exact moment reality hit him fully. He looked stunned. Not angry. Not calculating. Just overwhelmed. Twins, he repeated softly, almost to himself this time. His hand flexed once at his side before he looked away toward the rain. Claire suddenly remembered what he told her during the blackout gala. His younger twin brother died at 19. The grief in Damien's voice that night had sounded permanent, like an injury time failed to heal properly. And now fate had placed 2 tiny heartbeats directly in front of him. Claire saw emotion crack through his carefully controlled expression for the first time. It lasted less than a second, but it was there. Real. Dangerous. You do not have to say anything right now, Damien said quietly. I know this is overwhelming. Claire laughed nervously under her breath. Overwhelming is one word for it. He almost smiled at that. Almost. Then his face hardened slightly again as if another thought suddenly entered his mind. Has anyone else seen those results? Claire blinked. No. Just the doctor. Damien nodded once, but tension sharpened his jaw immediately afterward. That needs to stay private for now. A cold knot formed in Claire's stomach. Because of the media? Because of Victoria. Claire frowned softly. Your fiancé? The word felt strange leaving her mouth. Manhattan tabloids loved Victoria Hale. Blonde. Elegant. Daughter of a senator. The perfect billionaire partner according to every gossip magazine in America. Damien's expression darkened instantly. Victoria is not my fiancé, he said flatly. Our families announced a business arrangement. Nothing more. Claire looked down at the ultrasound photos in her hands again. The media disagrees. The media survives on lies. His tone carried enough weight to silence the room. Then softer this time, he added. Victoria cannot know about this yet. Claire's pulse quickened. Why not? Damien walked toward the rain-covered window before answering. Because the moment this becomes public, your life changes forever. His reflection stared back at him through the glass. Cold city lights. Tailored black coat. A man carrying too much power to ever live normally again. People around me protect money before they protect people. He continued quietly. And there are members of my board who would see these children as leverage before they ever see them as human beings. Claire felt sudden fear crawl through her chest. She had never considered that possibility. To her, the pregnancy still felt personal. Emotional. Terrifying in ordinary ways. But Damien lived in a world where billion-dollar companies moved like chess pieces and family names carried financial value. Twins connected to him would become headlines instantly. Public obsession. Internet cruelty. Endless cameras. Claire suddenly imagined strangers photographing her outside grocery stores or following her through subway stations. Her breathing grew shallow again. Damien noticed immediately. Claire. His voice softened. Look at me. She did. I will not let anyone hurt you. The certainty in his tone stunned her. No hesitation. No performance. Just absolute conviction. Before Claire could respond, shouting suddenly erupted somewhere downstairs near the hospital entrance. Multiple voices. Loud. Excited. Damien's security guard outside the hallway immediately reached for an earpiece. Claire's stomach dropped instantly. Because one sentence suddenly echoed faintly up through the hospital corridor loud enough for everyone to hear. A source confirmed Damien Blackwood is here with a pregnant woman. Damien closed his eyes briefly like a man watching disaster arrive 2 steps ahead of everyone else. Then he looked back at Claire with terrifying calm. We are out of time. The first camera flash exploded outside the hospital entrance like lightning striking glass, and Claire Bennett realized her quiet life had officially ended. Voices echoed up through the lower floors of St. Vincent Medical Center while reporters crowded against the front doors below, shouting Damien Blackwood's name loud enough for half the building to hear. Nurses moved nervously through the hallways. Patients peeked through cracked doors. Somewhere downstairs, security guards barked instructions over radios while rainwater soaked the marble lobby floors every time the entrance opened. Claire stood frozen beside the examination table, clutching the ultrasound photos so tightly the edges bent beneath her fingers. How did they find out this fast? She whispered. Damien's expression turned dangerously cold. Because someone inside this building sold the information. The room fell silent except for the storm outside. Claire felt fear spread slowly through her chest. This was not normal celebrity gossip anymore. It felt larger. Sharper. Like stepping too close to a machine powerful enough to destroy ordinary people without noticing. Damien turned toward the security officer waiting near the door. Move her through the private elevators, he ordered calmly. No press. No photographs. The guard nodded immediately and disappeared into the hallway. Claire looked at Damien in disbelief. You cannot seriously think I am leaving with you. You cannot seriously stay here now, he replied. The blunt honesty in his voice stole her next argument before she could form it. Another burst of shouting erupted downstairs. A woman's voice this time. Loud. Angry. Claire watched Damien's jaw tighten instantly. What is happening? She asked nervously. One of Damien's guards stepped back into the room looking uneasy for the first time since arriving. Sir, he said carefully, Miss Hale is downstairs. Claire's stomach dropped. Victoria. Damien closed his eyes briefly, almost like a man exhausted by a problem he already expected. Of course she is. The guard continued carefully. She came with media teams. Claire felt the blood drain from her face. Media teams? Damien grabbed his coat from the chair beside the wall and handed it to Claire without hesitation. Put this on. Damien, Claire. His voice softened suddenly, but the intensity remained. Listen to me very carefully. Victoria does not lose publicly. Ever. If she believes there is a scandal involving me, she will turn this hospital into a battlefield for headlines. Claire stared at him while thunder rolled outside again. For the first time since meeting Damien, she saw genuine concern break through his perfectly controlled exterior. Not for himself. For her. I do not want your life destroyed because of me, he said quietly. The sentence hit harder than she expected. Before Claire could answer, the hallway outside erupted with movement. Rapid footsteps. Raised voices. Then a woman's sharp voice sliced through the noise clearly enough to reach the room. Where is she? Victoria Hale sounded elegant even while furious. I know Damien is hiding someone in this hospital. Claire's pulse spiked instantly. Damien moved toward the door, but Claire grabbed his sleeve before he could leave. Wait. He turned back toward her. If I walk out there with you, she whispered shakily, everything changes. Damien looked at her for several seconds before answering. Everything already changed the moment those children existed. Silence swallowed the room again. Claire looked down instinctively at the ultrasound photos in her trembling hands. 2 tiny heartbeats. 2 innocent lives already powerful enough to shake billion-dollar families and dominate national headlines before they were even born. She suddenly understood what Damien meant earlier. These babies were not private anymore. Not in his world. Outside the room, Victoria's heels clicked sharply across the hospital floor while reporters shouted questions around her. Is Damien Blackwood hiding his mistress? Is there a pregnancy scandal? Miss Hale, are the engagement rumors over? Claire felt panic climbing her throat. She had spent years surviving quietly in New York by staying invisible. Invisible people survived longer. But there was no invisibility left now. Damien noticed her shaking hands instantly. Without speaking, he stepped closer and gently pulled his black wool coat around her shoulders himself. The fabric still carried traces of rain and expensive cologne. Warm. Protective. Familiar in a way that made her chest ache unexpectedly. Then he leaned slightly closer so only she could hear him over the chaos outside. No matter what happens downstairs, he said softly, stay beside me. The hallway suddenly fell silent for one terrifying second. Then Victoria Hale's cold voice spoke directly from outside the examination room door. Damien, she called smoothly. Open the door before the press does it for you. The silence outside the examination room door lasted only 2 seconds, but to Claire Bennett it felt like standing on railroad tracks hearing a train somewhere in the distance. Damien Blackwood did not move immediately. His expression remained unreadable, while rain streaked across the hospital windows behind him in silver lines. Then Victoria Hale knocked again, slower this time, almost amused. Damien, she said through the door with perfect calm. The reporters downstairs are becoming very creative. I would rather hear the truth from you first. Claire's stomach twisted painfully. Even through a closed door, Victoria sounded elegant enough to belong on magazine covers and dangerous enough to ruin lives with a smile. Damien finally looked toward the entrance. Take Claire through the private corridor, he told his security team quietly. But before anyone could move, Victoria spoke again. If anyone leaves this room before I walk in, every camera downstairs will follow them. Damien's jaw tightened instantly. Claire saw it clearly now. This was not a normal relationship conflict. This was strategy. Power. Reputation. Billion-dollar families moving against each other like corporations disguised as human beings. One of Damien's security officers stepped closer nervously. Sir, media numbers downstairs doubled in the last 5 minutes. Damien nodded once without taking his eyes off the door. Of course they did. Claire suddenly realized something terrifying. Victoria had not arrived emotional. She arrived prepared. The realization sent cold fear through her chest. Damien looked back at Claire carefully, his voice dropping lower. No matter what happens next, do not answer questions from the press. Claire swallowed hard. Damien, maybe I should leave alone. Absolutely not. The response came instantly. Sharp. Final. For the first time since entering the room, real anger flashed through his calm exterior. The second you step outside alone, they will tear your life apart before sunset. Claire looked down at the ultrasound photos again, her hands trembling harder now. She hated how quickly everything had spiraled out of control. 12 hours earlier she was still worried about overdue rent and violin rehearsals at the hotel ballroom. Now national reporters waited downstairs because she was carrying the children of a billionaire connected to one of America's most powerful families. A soft electronic chime suddenly echoed from Damien's phone. He glanced at the screen briefly. His entire expression darkened. What? Claire asked quietly. Damien locked the phone immediately. Too late. She already saw the headline notification glowing across the screen. Mystery woman inside hospital with Damien Blackwood. Possible pregnancy scandal. Claire felt the air leave her lungs. It already leaked, she whispered. Damien looked furious now. Not loud fury. Worse. Controlled fury. The kind wealthy men carried when they were deciding who would pay for betrayal later. Another knock came at the door. Then, without waiting for permission, Victoria opened it herself. The room changed instantly when she entered. Tall. Blonde. Immaculate white coat draped perfectly over her shoulders despite the storm outside. Diamond earrings catching the fluorescent lights softly every time she moved. Victoria Hale looked less like a woman and more like a carefully constructed public image worth millions of dollars. Her eyes landed on Claire immediately. then slowly lowered toward the ultrasound photos in her hands. Silence. Heavy. Calculating. Claire expected yelling. Anger. Accusations. Instead, Victoria smiled faintly. Somehow that felt worse. Well, she said smoothly, this explains the hospital visit. Damien stepped slightly in front of Claire without thinking. The movement was small but instinctive. Protective. Victoria noticed immediately. Her smile tightened almost invisibly. You are making this very public very quickly, Damien. Leave, Damien replied coldly. Victoria ignored him completely and studied Claire instead. You are younger than I expected. Claire felt heat rise into her face but stayed silent exactly like Damien instructed. Victoria walked slowly farther into the room, expensive heels clicking softly against the tile floor. Do you know what happens to women connected to powerful men in this city? She asked calmly. They become stories before they remain people. Damien's voice cut through the room instantly. That is enough. Victoria finally looked at him fully. Is it? She asked softly. Because the board already knows. Damien froze. Just slightly. But Claire noticed. Victoria stepped closer now, lowering her voice. The shareholders are panicking downstairs. Investors are already calling my father. She glanced once more toward the ultrasound photos. Twins would complicate inheritance discussions significantly. Claire suddenly felt sick. Inheritance discussions. Shareholders. Investors. They were talking about her unborn babies like financial headlines instead of children. Damien's eyes turned dangerously cold. You will not involve them in this. Victoria folded her arms calmly. It is already too late for that. Then she reached into her purse slowly and pulled out her phone. The screen displayed hundreds of flashing notifications. Endless headlines spreading across social media in real time. Photos of Damien's convoy outside the hospital. Rumors multiplying by the second. Victoria tilted the screen toward Claire with terrifying calm. Congratulations, she said quietly. America already knows you exist. Claire Bennett stared at the glowing phone screen in Victoria Hale's hand and felt her entire world collapse in real time. Headlines multiplied faster than she could read them. Billionaire hospital mystery. Secret pregnancy scandal. Damien Blackwood hiding woman inside St. Vincent Medical Center. Thousands of comments flooded beneath the articles every second. Some curious. Some cruel. Some already calling her a liar before they even knew her name. Claire's chest tightened painfully. This cannot be happening, she whispered. Victoria's expression remained perfectly composed. Unfortunately for you, this city feeds on scandal. Damien stepped forward immediately, placing himself fully between Claire and Victoria now. Leave, he said again, colder this time. Victoria finally looked annoyed. You are still thinking emotionally, Damien. That is dangerous. And you are still treating children like stock market numbers. The room went silent after that. Even Victoria's calm expression flickered slightly. Claire stood frozen beside the examination table, overwhelmed by the speed everything was unraveling. Just hours ago these babies belonged only to her. Tiny secret heartbeats hidden quietly inside her body. Now strangers across America debated them online like entertainment. Damien's phone suddenly rang sharply through the room. He answered instantly without looking away from Victoria. What? Silence. Then his expression darkened even further. Absolutely not. Claire watched tension spread visibly through his shoulders. Move the vehicles to the underground entrance. Damien ordered quietly into the phone. Nobody gets near her. He ended the call and looked directly at Claire. The press found the private elevator route. Her stomach dropped instantly. How? Victoria gave a small shrug. New York reporters are very motivated when billionaires panic publicly. Damien ignored her completely. He crossed the room toward Claire in 3 quick steps, lowering his voice so only she could hear. We are leaving now. Damien, I cannot walk through that. Her voice shook despite every attempt to stay calm. There are cameras everywhere. I know. People already hate me and they do not even know me. For the first time all day, something inside Damien seemed to crack completely. His expression softened with sudden intensity, almost painful in its honesty. Claire, he said quietly, look at me. She did. You did nothing wrong. The words hit her harder than expected. Because deep down, part of her already felt ashamed. That was how society trained women like her. Powerful men remained mysterious. Women became blamed. Victoria checked her phone again casually. The internet has already identified her. Claire's pulse spiked instantly. Victoria continued reading calmly from the screen. Claire Bennett. Violinist. 27. Mother deceased. Outstanding medical debt. Current residence in Brooklyn. Claire felt physically sick. How do they know all that? Because privacy is expensive. Victoria answered smoothly. And unfortunately, you cannot afford it. Damien's eyes turned ice cold. Enough. Victoria finally slipped the phone back into her purse. You need to think strategically now. If shareholders believe these children threaten the Blackwood inheritance structure, the board will move against you. Claire blinked in confusion. Move against me how? Neither Damien nor Victoria answered immediately. That silence terrified her more than words. Before anyone could speak again, another security officer rushed into the room breathless. Sir, reporters breached the west entrance. Damien reacted instantly. Take Claire downstairs. Victoria folded her arms slowly. If she leaves through the underground garage, the press will follow the convoy. Damien's expression sharpened dangerously. Then I suppose they will. He gently took the ultrasound photos from Claire's shaking hands and tucked them carefully into the inside pocket of his coat like something priceless. The small gesture stunned her unexpectedly. Not because it was dramatic. Because it was careful. Protective. Human. Damien then removed his own scarf and wrapped it loosely around Claire's shoulders beside the coat she already wore. Stay close to me, he said quietly. Do not stop walking. The hallway outside exploded with movement the second the door opened. Security teams surrounded them instantly while hospital staff stared openly from behind nurse stations. Claire kept her head lowered as cameras flashed somewhere downstairs bright enough to reflect against the hospital ceiling. Every step felt unreal. Then they reached the private elevator. The doors opened. Damien guided Claire inside while security blocked the hallway behind them. But just before the elevator doors closed completely, Victoria spoke one final sentence. Calm. Elegant. Terrifying. You should tell her the truth, Damien. He froze. Claire looked up immediately. What truth? Victoria's eyes settled briefly on Claire's stomach before returning to Damien. That every woman connected to the Blackwood family eventually becomes collateral damage. The elevator doors slid shut before Claire could ask another question. Silence filled the small space instantly except for the hum of machinery carrying them downward beneath the hospital. Claire looked toward Damien, her pulse racing again. What did she mean by that? Damien stared straight ahead at the descending floor numbers without answering. And for the first time since entering the hospital, Claire realized the billionaire protecting her might also be hiding something capable of destroying them both. The private elevator descended beneath St. Vincent Medical Center with a low mechanical hum, but to Claire Bennett it sounded more like a countdown towards something she could no longer escape. Damien Blackwood stood beside her in complete silence while the silver floor numbers continued dropping one by one. B2. B3. Parking access. Emergency transport. Restricted level? Claire watched his reflection in the elevator walls carefully. He looked calm again on the surface, but tension lived underneath every movement now. His jaw remained tight. One hand stayed clenched near his side as though he was holding back thoughts he did not want spoken aloud. Claire finally broke the silence first. What did Victoria mean? Damien did not answer immediately. The elevator lights reflected softly across his dark coat while rainwater still clung faintly to his hair from outside. Damien. Her voice shook slightly this time. What am I walking into? He closed his eyes briefly before responding. The Blackwood family has enemies. Claire frowned. Every billionaire has enemies. Not like mine. The elevator doors opened before she could ask another question. A private underground garage stretched before them, silent except for the distant echo of engines idling nearby. Black SUVs lined the concrete level, while security guards monitored every entrance through earpieces and surveillance screens. Yet somehow the place felt less safe than the hospital upstairs. Damien guided Claire forward carefully with one hand resting lightly against her back. The gesture felt protective enough to steady her nerves slightly. Then a sudden burst of camera flashes exploded from somewhere beyond the garage entrance gates. Claire froze instantly. How did they find us already? Damien's expression darkened. Because someone keeps feeding them information. One of his security officers hurried toward them. Sir, reporters track the convoy movement from Midtown. Social media live streams are spreading the location. Damien nodded once sharply. Move the decoy vehicles now. The guard disappeared immediately. Claire stared at Damien in disbelief. Decoy vehicles? I told you, he said quietly. Nothing about my world is normal. Another wave of shouting echoed faintly from the garage entrance outside. Reporters screaming questions. Security teams pushing them back. Camera flashes reflecting wildly against wet concrete walls. Claire suddenly felt dizzy from stress and exhaustion. Damien noticed instantly. Sit down. Before she could protest, he guided her gently toward the back seat of the nearest SUV. The interior smelled faintly of leather and cedarwood. Warm. Quiet. Isolated from the chaos outside. Damien crouched slightly beside the open door, his expression softer now that cameras could not see him. Look at me, he said calmly. Claire did. You are safe. She let out a shaky laugh under her breath. That is difficult to believe right now. For one brief second, Damien almost smiled again. But the moment disappeared quickly when another security officer approached holding a tablet. Sir, the guard said carefully, there is something else. Damien took the device immediately. Claire watched his face change the second he read the screen. Not anger this time. Worse. Fear. Real fear. What happened? Claire asked quietly. Damien remained silent too long. Then he turned the tablet toward her slowly. A new headline dominated every major news outlet in America. Blackwood heirs? Insiders claim billionaire family in crisis after secret pregnancy leak. Beneath the article sat a blurry photo taken less than 30 minutes ago. Claire exiting the hospital hallway beside Damien. Her face partially hidden beneath his coat. The ultrasound photos visible in her hands. Claire felt sick instantly. They photographed the babies. They photographed leverage, Damien corrected coldly. His voice carried enough bitterness to make Claire look up sharply. Damien stared toward the garage entrance where flashes still exploded nonstop outside the gates. When my brother died, he said suddenly, quieter now, my father stopped seeing family as people. He started seeing heirs. Replacements. Continuations of legacy. Claire listened carefully while thunder rolled faintly somewhere above the city streets overhead. And when my father realized I would never marry for business the way he wanted. Damien stopped speaking briefly, like the memory physically hurt. Things became complicated. Claire slowly understood the warning Victoria tried to give her earlier. This was bigger than gossip. Bigger than scandal. The Blackwood family empire was worth billions of dollars. These twins were not just children to people like that. They represented inheritance. Power. Future control. Damien looked back at Claire with painful honesty in his eyes. If my father believes those babies threaten his plans for the company, he will try to control every part of your life. Claire's breathing became uneven again. Control how? Before Damien could answer, shouting suddenly erupted near the garage entrance loud enough to echo through the entire underground level. Security guards moved instantly. Doors slammed. Radios crackled. Then one sentence cut clearly through the chaos outside. Move aside. Mr. Blackwood Sr. authorized this. Damien went completely still beside the SUV. Every trace of calm disappeared from his face. Claire's stomach dropped immediately, because she realized someone far more dangerous than Victoria Hale had just arrived. The underground garage fell silent the moment Damien Blackwood heard his father's name echo through the concrete level. Even the reporters outside seemed quieter somehow, as if the city itself understood a more dangerous man had just entered the game. Claire Bennett watched Damien carefully from inside the SUV and realized something unsettling. This was the first time since meeting him that he looked genuinely afraid. Not for himself. For her. For the twins. Heavy footsteps approached through the garage accompanied by security teams moving aside one by one. Then a tall older man emerged beneath the harsh fluorescent lights wearing a charcoal overcoat and silver cufflinks that reflected like cold steel. Edward Blackwood did not raise his voice. Men like him never needed to. Power already spoke before they opened their mouths. "Damien," he said calmly, glancing once toward the SUV. "You are embarrassing the family." Claire felt tension tighten across the entire garage instantly. Damien stepped forward before his father could get closer to the vehicle. "You should not be here." Edward ignored the statement completely. His pale gray eyes settled briefly on Claire through the open SUV door. Not cruel. Worse. Evaluating. Like a businessman examining numbers during a merger meeting. Claire instinctively moved one hand protectively over her stomach. Edward noticed. Everything about him suggested he noticed everything. "So the rumors are true," he said quietly. "Twins. Damien's." Voice hardened immediately. "Do not talk about them like assets." Edward finally looked directly at his son. "Everything connected to this family becomes an asset eventually." Claire suddenly understood where Damien learned to hide emotion so carefully. His father carried the same icy control, only older and sharper from decades of power. Rain pounded faintly overhead while camera flashes continued exploding beyond the garage gates outside. Edward glanced toward the reporters briefly before speaking again. "The board is already in emergency meetings." Damien folded his arms slowly. "I do not care." "You should." Edward's voice remained perfectly calm. "Investors lost $2 billion in projected market confidence in under 40 minutes today." Claire stared at them both in disbelief. $2 billion. And somehow they were discussing it while she still felt dizzy trying to process becoming a mother. Damien stepped closer toward his father now, lowering his voice dangerously. "Claire and the babies are not part of your business calculations." Edward looked almost amused by that. "The moment your children carry the Blackwood name, they become exactly that." Silence hit hard afterward. Claire suddenly felt trapped between two worlds that spoke entirely different languages. One measured life through feelings and survival. The other measured everything through legacy and control. Edward finally turned toward the SUV completely. "Miss Bennett," he said smoothly, "you should understand something immediately. Media attention surrounding this situation will become unbearable." Claire forced herself to meet his gaze despite the fear climbing her chest. "I never asked for any of this." For the first time, Edward's expression softened slightly. "Not warm. Just less cold. No one ever asks for power. They simply discover whether they survive it." Damien moved directly between them again. "You are leaving." Edward sighed quietly like a disappointed king dealing with an emotional prince. "Damien, your brother's death already destabilized succession discussions inside the company years ago. And now suddenly there are twins involved." The words hit the garage like broken glass. Claire saw pain flash across Damien's face instantly at the mention of his brother. Real pain. Old pain. The kind people carried for years beneath expensive suits and controlled voices. Edward continued calmly. "The board will demand certainty. DNA confirmation. Legal preparation. Public strategy." Claire felt sick again. "These are babies," she whispered. "Not a press conference." Edward looked at her carefully for several seconds before answering. "In this family, unfortunately, they are both." Damien's control finally snapped. Not loudly. Not violently. Worse. His voice dropped into terrifying calm. If the board comes near her, he said slowly, I walk away from Blackwood Holdings permanently. Every person in the garage froze. Even Edward looked surprised for the first time all night. Claire stared at Damien in shock. Billions of dollars. One of the largest companies in America. And he was willing to walk away from all of it standing beside an underground SUV because of her and 2 unborn babies. Edward studied his son carefully in complete silence. Then his gaze shifted slowly toward Claire again. Something changed in his expression this time. Calculation giving way to realization. He finally understood this was not another scandal Damien could be pressured out of. This mattered to him. Deeply. Outside the garage, reporters suddenly began shouting louder than before. More cameras arriving. More headlines spreading across America by the second. But inside the silence between father and son felt heavier than the storm above Manhattan. Edward adjusted his cufflinks calmly before speaking one final sentence. Then I suppose, he said quietly, the future of this family now depends entirely on whether she survives what comes next.